Hi everybody, and welcome to Module 7, and this is our final module of the course. So Module 7 runs from February 22nd through March 4th, and I do ask that you have your final assignment, your Bill Porter plan, submitted on or before March 4th. Typically, I like to have a 1-week total turnaround on grades where I grade your paper, get it back to you, submit final grades to Viterbo, close everything out, and I know that helps a lot of you that need to go to your district and indicate that you've passed the class and anything that means as far as possibly a change in status or compensation. You know, if that's at play, or licensure too. So I try to get that done as fast as possible. And actually, a week is kind of long. I mean, I'm guessing I'll probably have all of that wrapped up in 2-3 days. But want to start with a few shout outs today. One is to Amy. I appreciate your YouTube UDL search, and you did have a video which did a nice job of describing the gradual release of learning. Something again, we just need to think about more. I'm coming down with about 10 things, like always remember, you know, sense of agency and purpose, and gradual release of learning and rigor and things like that. But we have these core elements, and you did a nice job with your video. Elizabeth, your YouTube video on UDL, and it was the first video, and the person said, allow this to take time. And I think that's so important. I had a meeting this afternoon with my therapy staff, and we're doing a major renovation. We gutted 2 rooms and are creating probably, I don't know, 1,500 to 1,800 square foot sensory / play skills room, in addition to other rooms that we have that are kind of similar to that. But these were 2 unused classroom areas, which then we created the center. It's pretty amazing. Actually, we ordered an overhead swing unit, which is made out of this very heavy steel, and so it's custom designed, and it arrived, and it goes the length of the room. It's like an indoor playground, I guess, except none of us would be able to afford anything like that. But we were talking though about a rollout, and there's been a lot of excitement with staff, which is great. And the thought from some people is after spring break that room will be available. So during the day, it's a therapy, it's an auxiliary, there we go, therapy room. And we also then have times when it would just be for sensory and for recreation. And then after hours, because WCBVI is a 24-hour school, I mean, there's dorms, that it would be available then as a recreation center. But what's interesting is people are really starting to push the timelines on this project, which really we just thought of, you know, this year, and saw that the need and the opportunity were both present. And now that the superstructure is up for what would be the swings, you know, people are wanting to know when they can get in. So we talked tonight, the therapy team, you know, we sat down, and I said, really from the start, this is probably about a 2-year, 3-year project, and we never sat down and did that. And not necessarily that we probably had to do that, because we already have our therapy rooms and equipment, and but we probably didn't let the staff know, you know, well enough that it is going to take time for this to happen. I mean, we order very specific swings, for example, you know, the neoprene stretch fabric and other things in case swing hits someone, it's not going to hurt them. And then there's the various clamps that we're going to add to this, and the dynamic loads. And there's a lot of behind the scenes things that go into this, and the students that we have coming in versus students we have going out. So literally, I mean, there's like a 3-ring binder of just things that we have to order yet for the room. When I say 3-ring binder, I say a 3-ring binder. The photo, how we're going to use it, how we're going to train on it, how it's going to work with our existing equipment. So, but getting back, I think people felt better, when we had the discussion tonight, and I said I'll work on, having that broader discussion with staff, that we'll have some things up and running before the end of the year, but it's probably going to be really realistic next year that we'll have everything in. But it takes time. So universal design for learning, which is a segue and back to that, it takes time. So when you go under that initiative, let people know, we're going to start. Here's maybe our pilot. Here's what we want to accomplish. Here's our timeline, our baseline. Always get your baseline. Always be able to show growth from baseline. And then, you might say, here's our goal for the first semester. Here's the goal for year 1. Here's the goal for year 2. Here's what we want to have accomplished in year 3. You can do these things like put out 5-year goals, 7, 10-year goals. And that's really like looking into a crystal ball. And the reason I say that is the research that I've done through Madison shows that what I call legacy knowledge exists for about 3 years in any school. And that can be, even if the staff largely have not turned over, it can be the same principal, same staff. Meaning if there was an initiative that occurred 3 years ago, a lot of people aren't going to remember that initiative if it ended, and they're not going to remember much of the details. And typically what happens then is if you restart an initiative, you end up doing a lot of the things that you already did. One example right now that I'm encountering is working with a school district that is doing parent-focused groups, doing a great job with these, but also at the same time didn't realize that they undertook this process no more than, I think, 3 years ago, and somehow that data was missing, and I mean, no one even spoke that it existed until I was able to kind of go through and to find that this comprehensive study had been done by numerous people. So, but that is pretty typical when I work school safety. You have that legacy knowledge. So when you set goals, I think it's realistic to set, you want goals right away where you can, within 6 months, say, get together, here's what we've done so far. That keeps people engaged. And then accountability is a year out, 2, 3. But once you get beyond that, what I do think you need to do is every year you need to revisit and recalibrate your goals, because you don't know, what the landscape is going to be before you. So recalibrate the goals. And part of it, you don't know the technology that's going to be available to you either, or some legislation, or is there some referendum that's going to pass, which is going to change now the structure of your school, some different facility use that could be available. And so that's my building off of Elizabeth. Allow things to take time, but don't get people into a mode of planning beyond 3 years. Unless like it's buildings and grounds, of course, if you're planning for a roof or something like that. But if it's UDL, do it 3 years at a time. Andy, your video where you mentioned, or in the video they mentioned that the curriculum was a disability. I am in full agreement with you on that in so many cases, and I think that actually response to intervention, the way I look at that is I see that as pointing out the flaws in existing curriculums. I've said people look for the rationale for why students don't perform to a certain criteria or standard, whatever it would be, as being secondary to the teacher's effectiveness. And really that's, I look at that and I kind of just shake my head and say, we have the most trained teachers, passionate access to technology and our schools today versus 50 years ago. I mean, come on. We have phenomenal teachers. We have, master's degrees in the type of courses that they're taking and the materials that they're using. But we really haven't changed curriculum a lot. And what happens is, when there's a curriculum adoption, at least this is the way that I've typically seen them, and I've seen a number. The director of curriculum, if your school has one, or else it's the principal or curriculum committee. You have vendors come in, they kind of make their pitch and say, here's what we can offer you. And then your committee identifies maybe 2 or 3 that are affordable and that seem to line up with state objectives and then also local objectives. And people either vote on it, or else the committee makes a decision and, hey, that's your curriculum. And the deal is, once you get a curriculum, that's your curriculum for a chunk of years. I mean, curriculum adoption, a new curriculum right now is often 7 to 10 years, because there are other competing forces for those dollars. And while policies might say every 3 years there'll be a review of curriculum, that might be true, but to actually say like you're going to have new textbooks and new materials, probably not. In the future, when textbooks become notebook based, and really you're going to have access to that year's version of whatever's coming out, and probably like an intra-year upgrade, that becomes kind of a moot point. You're just maintaining your subscription to whatever vendor it is, and you're always going to have largely, current material. Personally, what I'd love to see the state do, I'd love to see the state take that on and either work exclusively, have their vision and then work with a group to put it together. I don't know if you need to push that out through a vendor. The state has its own resources. They could hire and put that together, team of computer programmers and so forth. But I don't think it'll happen, but I think that would be really fascinating. Then every school district, whether you have 300 kids K-12 or you have 25,000 K-12, you'd have access to the same types of materials. Doesn't mean you're teaching the exact same thing. I'm not saying that at all, but it does level a playing field, and it also helps kids if they're moving district to district, at least that you're having your standards better aligned. And we have more of that happening. But as I digress on that, I just remember down from my office in one of my districts was the curriculum director, and she had the final 2 curriculums set up outside of her office. So one kind of went this way and then one went down toward my office. And teachers had to come through and they cast their ballot. They would look over some of the materials, and it was like the voting box at the end, and then that's how the curriculums got decided. Now teachers had time to look at these things prior. They were over at district office, but and they did get to listen to a vendor, and I think the curriculum person did a couple of presentations. But largely, unless you're passionate about it and went through, the only time you might be doing your vote is when you're walking past and seeing, hey, this looks like this will be, better than this. So here's where I'm casting my vote. So as we look to wrap things up, when you do your Bill Porter plan is designed to tie in what you've learned in this class. So a few things obviously that should be there: universal design for learning, doing like an ecological assessment, just walking around the building wherever Bill, your school Bill's attending. Can you get to his locker? How's the lunchroom going to function for him? So forth. Disability, excuse me, education and awareness. How are you going to foster that within Bill's class, within the, within the staff? And again, there's just a number of parts that go with it. Look at the rubric, because where people lose points on this assignment is they do not follow the rubric. And the rubric, here's what is almost always left off if somebody loses points. They leave off the final two parts of the rubric, which mean you have to identify a certain number of clubs, like in-school clubs or out-of-school clubs, that Bill could be a part of. Now, if he's in kindergarten, I understand. You're going to have to maybe say, he could go to library time, or maybe there's some 4-H thing, or, whatever. I mean, you're not going to have as many options. I get it. But, if Bill is middle school, Scouts an option. Again, 4-H an option. Park and Rec is an option, your local Park and Rec. Now, I'm not going to keep listing all of these off, but that needs to be there. The other part then is the outside agency. No matter what age Bill is, you need to be listing outside agencies that are going to support Bill. Probably both when he's in school and when he's not. I'm going to throw a few your way. Your County Human Services is going, your ADRC. You want to make sure that they're aware of Bill right away, and so they can start to put, they have waiting lists, or some say they don't, but all of them do. But they might have summer programs, respite, so forth, that would be available to Bill's family, and then also programs for Bill. Looking at, I'm going to throw another one out there. I'm being really nice today. It must have been a great Friday. And another one is, like Easter seals, because all the way up until Bill's an adult, I mean, Easter seals has their different camps for people with cerebral palsy. So, if you're a child, it's going to be one thing, but if you're an adult, I mean, it focuses more on, it can be nature hikes, can be things like hunting, like bow and arrow, whether it's authentic or whether it's practice or things like that. But getting out and canoeing, outdoor adventures, things like that. But so right there too. And again, if you go to the WSTI.org or the WSTI site, or now I think it's called the Transition Initiative, whatever. But if you go to WSTI.org and you click on your county, it's going to list a number of agencies that are going to be able to help persons with disabilities and also their family. But look at the rubric before you do the assignment, because I have seen people who have just done, great papers, but they just don't align with the rubric, so they lose the points at the end. Now, how to write the Bill Porter story. I think I talked about this in the intro video, but I want to go through it again. You're writing this in an informal manner. Now, I mean, it needs to be done in a professional style, and make sure you put your name on your paper. But here's an example. So whatever grade Bill is, he comes into your school. Now, if you're not teaching right now, you're going to have to fabricate some of this. Say like, I am I'm going to be teaching 3rd grade, and I expect Bill to come into my classroom, or play it off of some previous experience you had. And sometimes people will say, well, I teach in a private school, we probably wouldn't have a student with cerebral palsy served. Well, okay, but for this, pretend that you do. And then, so how would you make that work to the, best you could with the facilities and the resources that you had? These are scenarios to incorporate the different components that we've talked about during class. This doesn't mean this would be the exact plan for Bill. I mean, of course, I know there's other people that would be involved and things like that. But so if I'm writing the Bill Porter plan, I might write and start by saying, my principal met with me today and notified me that we will be getting a new 4th grade student, and his name is Bill Porter, and I am a 4th grade regular education teacher, and I will be making sure that Bill is welcome to our school and that the necessary accommodations are made. and make sure that there's academic rigor, and that as a school we can do everything we can do to help Bill advance academically and socially in our setting. So that could be your intro, and then say, and here's how then I would start to learn about cerebral palsy. Here's how I would help the staff learn about CP. Here's how I will learn about Bill. Not that you have to do it in that order, but and Bill's parents, Bill's history. So you're going to go through and you're going to write that story. You're going to write that story, and it's going to be in a narrative style, informal. It's kind of like you're talking to me right now. Imagine that. You know, that's the kind of style. So you don't have to go in and quote things and cite things and stuff like that. But it needs to be, you know, written again in a good story format of leading me through the moment, you know, when you learn, or when Bill starts, to then how you're meeting these different criteria which are set forward in the assignment, such as, again, disability education of staff, of students, how any accommodations you're making, and then, you know, I would go there, maybe focus on universal design for learning, which we talked about. And I already talked about the last, you know, 2 sections in the paper. So it's a fun paper to write. Now, I will say that because people typically email me afterwards. A lot of people have emailed me and said this was fun. I enjoyed it. I felt this put me in a great place to apply what we talked about during class, and I feel more competent and more confident. And, you know, just flat out that they had fun. You know, they're glad they didn't have to write a research project for their final paper. I mean, I did have that years ago, or it was not the Bill Porter plan. And when you get to see the video of Bill, you have now the flexibility to take what Bill is, so a door-to-door salesman, you know, an adult, and you can backwards engineer that to wherever you want to place Bill, which I think is much easier than me showing you a video of a 4th grade Bill or something like that, and then you having to work with that. You can put Bill at whatever level that you're teaching. And now if you're an itinerant teacher, then, you know, again, put them in a grade level and just indicate that you're going to be working with that grade level teacher to help serve Bill and to make sure his needs are met. So let me see, I got a couple other things. The Eportfolio. So if you scroll down, you're going to find earlier that I posted about the Eportfolio. I think it was first week of class. It's still there. You are required to do, unless there's some special circumstance where you're only taking this for the credit, but if you're in the reading program, you are required to do your Eportfolio for the program. I don't know exactly 100% how that works. I do know you're required to create a website. A lot of people use Weebly, some use Google Sites, whatever. By the time you've reached me, you probably already have done this for a couple courses, but if you're starting out in 605, go down, read the materials. You're going to have to make a 605 section on your website to talk about, and again, it's detailed down in the Eportfolio, you know, what you've learned from the class. You're going to have to post your Bill Porter plan as your course artifact. And then email me, not upload, email me the link, the URL to your Eportfolio webpage. And make sure that I have access to it. Sometimes people will email me like a Google Sites page, and then it'll say, I'll click on it and say you do not have access, and I have to email people back and say I need access. But you know, you need to email that to me, and I need to have it by March 4th. I have to then, I go through it, and I will you know, offer you feedback on that, and especially if there's something on it really wonky that I see, I'll note that. But I need to submit that to Viterbo then. So that's very important. Now, here's kind of an addendum to that. you are required to have your ePortfolio done when you complete your reading licensure program through Viterbo. So if you do not have your 605 page done by March 4th, it's not the end of the world. But you still need to email me with whatever you have, or email me and say, I'm currently working on this. And then I can indicate that to Viterbo. When you do get to the point where you are going to grab your, or go for your licensure, everything's got to be done because they're going to look at your ePortfolio. So your 605 entry needs to be in there. So of course the goal is that you do the entry every time you have the class, the corresponding entry. But if you don't have it, or if you have it partially done, I mean, email me, because I have to submit something to Viterbo about the status of your web page. So, regarding the 605 course. And it is okay if I put it is in development, but if I do not hear anything from you and put no response, that's not good. So again, ePortfolio is down at the bottom. If you have any questions about whether or not you're required to complete it, talk to your advisor. But again, I believe everybody needs to do that unless you're taking this class just for just for credit, for example. Coming up in this module, module 7, we talk about the umbrella of inclusion, which I love because it's hand-drawn. And one of the parts that's under that is playground, and I think that gets lost so much. Playground is an area for inclusion, and I talked about, there's a few things. One is to work with your buildings and grounds person, just to make sure that your playground equipment and playground's accessible, that you're not having to go, every time it rains, that you don't have to go through 40 feet of mud to get to the slide, which doesn't fare well with a wheelchair. Sometimes PTOs will help out with gravel or some kind of paved surface, but the other part is, if you have any say in playground equipment that is purchased, and I purchased hundreds of thousands of dollars of playground equipment over the years, and I did this largely through ERA dollars, the stimulus dollars, but I made sure it was stuff that kids with disabilities could access and have fun with and participate with other non-disabled students. An example was a device called a Sway Fun. Basically, it kind of looked like a boat, and you could get a wheelchair up in it, you could get some other kids in it, and then it just kind of swayed like side to side. And it was fun, it was popular, and actually then it was a piece of equipment that the community was able to benefit from, because no one had something like that, at their backyard park. So that was one consideration. So, like in the Bill Porter story, do you need a sway fun out on Bill's playground? Probably not, but I've seen so many of these things too, where it's like you have a peg, and I might have talked about this, earlier, but it's like you got a rabbit, and you got to move him through this peg thing, and then he gets over here, and then it's done. It's like a peg board type thing, and it's like, or you spin these letters, so here's a B, C, whatever, or in animals, and that's great for like the first 3 minutes that you do it, and then you never want to do it again. And I mean, but it's wheelchair accessible, so technically it meets the requirements of making your playground, so it does have some accessible equipment. But I wouldn't even bother with stuff like that. I would go for things that are that can be used by students without disabilities and students with disabilities. You can be creative too. Like there's some things like just regular basketball hoops that you lower down and things like that. But anyway, I kind of digress on that. But one thing is, think about your playground. If Bill is young, and he is going to have recess. But so we talk about that in Module 7, and then I do have the animal school video, which you've probably seen. It's not very long. That goes along with my motto, which I've stolen from some other person, which I would post the video if I could find it. Maybe I will. But playing to your strengths. So there are some things which some students just aren't going to be that good at, and that's okay. I mean, and there's other things they're going to be great at, just like all of us. So I have a guitar back there, or back there. No, it's back there. So, and I'm not great at playing that guitar, but that's okay because, I learn and do the best I can and try to improve myself. I am, great at doing a number of other things, like building some things, stuff like that. But I don't know about great, but much, much more kind of in my wheelhouse. And it's the same thing, I think, with students. We get to a point where sometimes we identify, the story of getting a report card home. And actually, I had parent-teacher conferences for my daughters last night. And, hypothetically, let's say you have a report card and you have, A in language arts, A in math, and a D in science and an A in art. And you show that to any parent, and what's your reaction? The reaction is probably going to be, I can't believe there's a D in science. We've got to do something about that. So, yeah, okay. But yeah, there's 3 A's though. Look, there's an A in math, there's an A in language arts, and I think an A in art. We want to make sure that we don't all of a sudden focus on the one area of weakness. Of course we want to bring that up, we want to strengthen that, but that might go only so far. We want to make sure that what we have, if that math and language arts is strong, let's make sure we're staying in that, keeping that strong. So I'll look for that video and I'll try to post it. I think the name of the video is called Trombone Player Wanted. I used it in a different class that I teach. It was very well received, and if I can find it, I'll post it during this module. And the speaker is a lot of fun too. It's about 17 minutes long, but I think it underlies the point too. It's going to be the same thing with Bill. It can be very easy to start to point out Bill's deficits and weaknesses and work from that model. So don't. Work from the model of here's Bill's strengths and potential, and then what accommodations, what other means can be used to capitalize upon those. Let me look here. I do not have anything else written down on my bright orange card, which is facing me. I do want to remind you to do your course evals. Apparently Viterbo contacts you or has contacted you and has given you a code and to go in, and of course a high rate of completion of evaluations is what they're seeking. And so they do email instructors and ask us just to remind you to do the evaluations. Again, and those don't come from me; those come from Viterbo. And if you haven't had that come to you already, so I want to thank you for the time that we've had. Please continue to check your email and check the course right up until the end, because I might have a question about your assignment. And in that case, I need to get a hold of you, so I will, email you or call you or whatever. But or if something comes up that I want to make a post about, that maybe is relevant to Module 7 or something that has to do with the Bill Porter plan. I'm not going to post any change to it, but if there's something like a relevant resource that someone shares or whatever. So just go in and just keep checking. Feel free to keep my contact information to get a hold of me. It's amazing. I have students that I have instructed years ago who contact me. I had one just a month ago. And she had a teaching position and was working to create an inclusive classroom, and was sharing some of the things that she had done, and just was so excited about that. And I felt, wow, you reached out and you made that contact back, and we're sharing some of the things that you were doing. So, but yeah, feel free to keep my contact information if there ever is a time when you have materials maybe too that you discover that you want to share and say, hey, maybe you want to consider sharing this with students in your class. Or I do have the this YouTube channel you can subscribe to if you want. And what this is typically will be these type of fireside chats, and I do have some other videos on safety that will be in this thread or in this channel. I do have another channel I've created, and I think you can see it. I don't have any videos up, but that is more of a Um, more of a personal kind of storytelling channel that really isn't going to have anything to do with probably education or things like that. Just more or less kind of fun reflections on life. So not very serious, and of course will be G-rated. Haven't started it yet. Have a few ideas, but a number of people have said, give it a try. We like to listen to you on YouTube, and I do a number of things where I'm a present in different situations, and I am getting a new camera, so the one that is recording me now is going to be replaced because this is an actually pretty old setup down here. So it is, I think, called Solitude Surfer, and I should be putting a video or two under there before too long. But again, just kind of a fun way to reflect upon life, kind of the way that I should start out some of these videos at times. So you've been, you've been an active group. You've been very original, very deep in your thought. And I appreciate your candidness. I appreciate the humor that you bring to the class. I look forward to grading your Bill Porter plans. And again, I'll have all the grades updated. Everything prior to March 4th, I'll get in and do some updating. March, and after your final papers return, then your grade will be submitted to Viterbo. So, probably at the latest, you're looking about March 11th for Viterbo to get your grade. I submit it electronically. There's a thing called VitNet. So the moment they get it to the point that it gets to the registrar is like instantaneous. So again, if you're looking to get a transcript, request one, toward probably mid to late March, and it would have this class on it. Again, I know people need those for different things, so I want to make sure I do my part in making sure that you have that in your hands. Take care of yourself for the rest of the school year, and we had our first, I think, 50-degree day here, accompanied by 50-degree winds. It's kind of a little bit sad because the snow hill outside of my backyard where my daughters and I go sledding and tubing, is pretty much done for the season. Although now we get to bring the bikes out and have that kind of fun, and soccer balls and stuff like that. But as a dad, your kids only stay young for so long, so I'm kind of calculating with my oldest, maybe got a year or two left where sledding's going to be cool, and my youngest, though, I probably got about 5 years, so still got some time. And I have a coworker, and her dad still sleds by himself and goes and they have a big hill and sleds and toboggan, takes out a big tube, and so I guess you're never too old to be a kid. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for, again, taking this class. Viterbo is a wonderful university, and you will encounter terrific faculty in addition to the faculty that you've worked with already. So, and feel free to contact me. I'm glad you're taking this professional step. So thank you for all the work you've done for the kids that you serve, and all the work that you're going to be doing, serving kids of Wisconsin, Iowa, and pretty much all across the U.S. Thank you.